Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kat and today I am doing my September wrap-up. In September, I was going through a huge reading slump, so I actually only read 13 books, 10 that are of my regular wrap-up and 3 that are romances. So I'm not going to do a separate romance video. I'm just going to get them out of the way really quick at the beginning of this video. So the first one I want to talk about is Fix Me by Monroe. This was the second in a series. I was blown away by the first one, but this one left a lot to be desired. I give this 3 stars. The next one I want to talk about is Kamari's by Sammi Cee. This one I also gave 3 stars. It was an average brother's best friend romance. So the last romance I read was Deal with the Dragon by Blanchard, and this one I gave 3.5 stars. It was okay. I thought it would be similar to Radiance by Grace Draven. It was not, so I should just read the second after Radiance. Okay, so now let's get into the 10 novels that I read. So this wrap-up actually has a huge assortment of stars. It goes from 2 stars all the way up to 4.5 stars, and some of these I was highly anticipating and they completely let me down, and some I had no anticipation for and they were absolute stellar novels. So without further ado, let's get started with the bottom of the pile. This is A Legend of the Future by Agustin de Rojas. This is following a crew who is in a spaceship traveling to one of Saturn's moons and back. On their way home, they meet with catastrophe, and it follows the crew's mental health as the remaining members decide how they are going to get home to Earth. Now, this immediately intrigued me because I love a good spacefaring novel. However, this book is so uniquely formatted in a bad way that I hated reading this. I hated reading this. One of my problems with this is that there are no definitive breaks when there is a character change. Not only is it not paragraph or chapter character change, but even within paragraphs, one sentence could be one character and one sentence could be a different character, and you don't know. It is so confusing. You are never sure who's talking and you can't differentiate between the characters. As well as all internal dialogue is formatted the same way as spoken dialogue. So again, you're never sure if a character is actually speaking or thinking, and also what character is doing that. So I read a review when I was halfway through that said, make it to the end is worth the suffering. And I disagree, because while the ending was cool, I do not think it makes up for the entire rest of this poorly formatted and such a confusing novel. That all being said, I gave this book 2 stars and I don't recommend it to anyone, and I will be immediately donating it to my local street library the next time I do a donation run. Next up is a book that I have heard nothing but good things about from everyone, and I'm very confused. This is Real Life by Brandon Taylor. This was a buddy read that I did with Siân from Pastel Time, and we just both suffered through this together, okay? This is following Wallace, who is a Black graduate student in a Midwestern town. And so when I heard about this novel, I thought it was going to be an exploration of race issues and microaggressions, and it was that, but also so much less than that. It's more an exploration of just this really toxic friend group and this really violent and aggressive relationship Wallace has with someone in that friendship group, and I just really didn't like it. I really didn't like it, and Siân didn't either. I think she gave it a 2, so I gave it a 2.5, so I must have liked it a little better, but I'm gonna be, I guess, the odd person out here and say I really didn't like this novel and I don't recommend it. Next up is a novel I did have high hopes for. This is 77 by Guillermo Saccomanno, who is an Argentinian writer. So this is following a gay university professor of literature during 1977 as he is living his life and people are just disappearing from the streets. The reason why I gave this book 2.5 stars is because there were huge sections in here where it is just political deluge it would just go on and on and on, and it was just being like flooded with names and places, and I had no real reference of how that was impacting the main character. For me, it was way more politically heavy than I anticipated. I thought it was going to be almost a slice of life of a gay man during this time, but it's more a political examination of that time as he flashes back. I don't think it was for me, but I think someone like my husband per se might get more out of it. So do with that what you will. So next up is a very easy 3-star. This is Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell, drawn by Faith Erin Hicks. So this is just very fall themed and lovely. It's following a pair of really close friends who have worked at this pumpkin Halloween fall season pumpkin patch for years while they're going through high school, and this is their last time together because after this they're going to go to university. And he has always had this crush on a girl, and his friend is going to help him finally like confess to her basically, and then they start off on an adventure. This was sweet and also a bit, in my opinion, too sweet and a little bit cliche, but again, I got this at my street library for the sweet price of nothing. I exchanged a book that I owned, and this will be going straight back to the street library, so no harm, no foul. It was really cute for Halloween season, and yeah, now I'm gonna donate it back. So funny enough, the next 3 books are all books I read for my non-binary mini burst. So I was not reading any non-binary authors, and I knew that I needed to do a spotlight on it so that I could actively address my inadequacies, I guess you could say. So the first one I want to talk about here is Milk Teeth by Ray White. This is a poetry collection. Ray White is a non-binary Australian poet, and this is a collection of poems focusing on what it's like to be non-binary, discussion of body, and also plants, houseplants, oddly enough. I really enjoyed this collection, and I have some new favorite poems. The first poem was my favorite. I wish that I could read a whole book based off of that one poem. So if you're looking for a poetry collection, which you've never heard of and you're looking for something different, this would be one to check out. It did win the 2017 Thomas Shapcott Poetry Prize in Australia, so it's a pretty good one if you are going to try something new. So the next one is When the Moon Was Ours by Anna Marie McLemore, who identifies as a non-binary author. This is following 2 main characters, Miel, who is a young woman who grows flowers out of one of her wrists, and a young trans boy named Sam, who is her best friend. Some people think that the flowers growing out of her wrist are a curse. Some people think they could use it to their benefit, and people in the town want to use those flowers for their own gain and are threatening Sam's identity in order to make Miel do what they want. So I found this story very lyrical and very beautiful in the ideas and in the history, and I loved the characters. Anna Marie McLemore does a beautiful job creating characters. The downfall for me though, and why it gets 3.5 stars, is the repetitious language. So certain scenes or memories are replayed 2 or 3 times throughout the book, and I just found it kind of repetitious, and also some of the plot points are, I think, a little predictable and a little cliche. However, this is for a YA audience, so maybe I'm just too old, and that's why I think it's a bit obvious. But I'm really glad that I finally read an Anna Marie McLemore. I just don't think that the over-flowery language is for me, pun intended. And the last book that I'm going to talk about that was in the non-binary mini burst is The Deep by River Solomon, who is a non-binary Black American author. So this one is following a group of sea-dwelling African descendants who were thrown overboard during the slave trade and have created this community underwater. And our main character is the historian, which means that she holds all of the painful memories of the centuries of abuse of these people. And every year, for a few days, everyone relives the memories, and the rest of the year, the historian holds them, and it's so painful. Right before the next gathering, she decides to flee, and that's where the story goes from there. The reason that it gets 3.5 stars is really because I loved the ocean setting. I loved the creation of this whole world. I think River Solomon is absolutely an amazing storyteller and world creator. However, certain elements of the formatting were very confusing. So a little bit of the ways through, we switch point of view and it switches from she, her to they, them. And I wasn't aware that there was a second character and that we had gone back in time. It took me so long to figure that out because I wasn't sure if our main character had decided to transition to they, them pronouns or if we were following a completely different person. So I was very confused. And then also this again uses a cyclic storytelling structure where certain things are just said repeatedly. I do know that some reviewers think that this book was originally created to be told in the oral storytelling tradition, which would make sense because then the cyclical nature is reminding viewers and listeners of what you're talking about if maybe they have just joined or they've forgotten. However, because I read it as a novel, that's what I'm going to judge it as, and so I gave it 3.5 stars. We are to my top 3 books of the month, and the first one I want to talk about here is The Transmigration of Bodies by Yuri Herrera, who is a Mexican writer. This is small, but it packs such a punch, and I finished it in 2 sittings at the end of the month, and I was blown away. So we are following 2 feuding crime families in an unnamed Mexican city that has recently had mosquito-borne plague breakout. So everyone is terrified to go out on the streets, but our main character, the Redeemer, is called, and there is a problem because both of the feuding drug families have one of the children of the other family, and the problem is they're both dead. So before both families kick off and a huge battle goes down on this city that's already deep in plague time, he has to figure out a way to talk them down from violence and exchange the bodies peacefully. I thought that this was brilliant and I give it 4 stars. I will absolutely be reading his other one, which people say are even better. I think it's Signs Preceding the End of the World. So if you have read that one, let me know what you think because everyone in the reviews was like, this is his second best and the other one is even better. So I cannot wait to get my hands on it. I hope our library is open soon because I know that my local library has it and I cannot wait. My second favorite book of the month is Almond by Won-Pyung. And this was a buddy read I did with Alicia from Alicia Reads. And this was my first time reading this Korean author, and it definitely won't be my last because I found this book very engrossing, hard to put down, and I just was really captivated by the characters. Speaking of the characters, we are following Yoonjae, who is a young boy who has alexithymia, which means he can't really fathom or understand most emotions, nor does he show them. So he has a really hard time understanding people in general. And when this devastating catastrophe happens and his family is ripped away from him, he has to find a new way to live and function. So this follows not only Yoonjae, but also the people who act kind of as satellites and kind of friends or protectors around him during this time. So they include a young boy his own age who is known as a troublemaker, the owner of the bakery on the floor above his family's bookstore that he is still running. This was really interesting because Sun's writing style is very sparse. So there isn't a lot of extra to go off of. What is said is pretty much exactly how it is. And I think it's a great demonstration of how Yoonjae's mind would have worked. There were a few sticking points where Alicia and I wondered if someone with alexithymia might actually be able to understand or express himself in that way, but of course we're not sure. Neither of us have that condition. We would absolutely love a review from someone who has alexithymia. This was a high 4-star for me, and yeah, I just can't wait to read more, and I'm always glad to find new authors that I love. That goes for both this one and this one, so I'm so happy. And my favorite book of the month came out of absolutely nowhere, and it hurt me so bad. This is Dog Boy by Eva Hornung, who is an Australian author. Wow, this one hurts me. It hurts me, it hurts me, it hurts me, it hurts me. And it is absolutely on my top 10 books of the year. So this is set in a city in Russia, and we are following a young 4-year-old boy named Ramochka who is abandoned by his parents and his uncle to fend for himself. He wakes up in an apartment one day and they are just no longer there. The only thing that's there is like the bedding and some food scraps. And once he gets hungry and there's no more food, he has to venture outside, and he's only 4. So he sees a little dog and he follows her to her lair, and she takes him in as one of her own puppies. This is absolutely brutal because you're following the young boy as he is growing and as he's adapting, and he's kind of in this halfway zone between people and dogs. He gets a lot of characteristics and understanding of the world through the dogs, yet he knows that he can also help the dogs and get food for his family if he acts human in certain areas and certain circumstances. And as he grows older and older, things just get so heartwarming and also bleak at the same time. Like, that's the only way I can put it, because it's very clear that in the area where he is, children freeze in the snowbanks, they're thrown out unwanted and they freeze to death, or they are tortured, or they're sent away, or they're experimented on. And so his life with the dogs, who care for him and protect him and make sure he's well fed and warm, is actually not as bad and is way better than a lot of the situation of the children nearby, which is explained throughout the book. Devastating. So devastating. A lot more happens in this book than just that. A lot more. And the end of this just ruined my faith in humanity completely. This isn't real. It was inspired by other dog stories of children being raised by packs of dogs, but this specific story is not real. But I was so furious at the end. I was like, oh, I'm starting to get mad about it now. Like, the end of this really just ruined my whole day, and it made me so sad, so deep in my heart. And I really recommend this if you're looking for a novel which is so focused on sensory experiences and family bonding in a really unique way, and looking at the goodness of animals, because like the basic message of this book is we don't deserve dogs and humans are trash. Is basically like how I felt after I read this book, but I loved it and I highly recommend it. I gave this 4.5 stars. So that finishes up my wrap up. I think that I had a very varied September reading, and I cannot wait to get into October, because that is where all of my spooky Halloween reads are coming. So I've just been having a fabulous reading time, and I hope that you are too, and I look forward to talking to you in another video soon. Lots of love. Bye!